Hello and welcome to Mythology and Folklore with Danny Hoots. I'm Danny Hoots, and today we'll be talking about my favorite creatures, vampires. Now, vampires, although very, very romanticized through our modern culture, are actually pretty grotesque beings if you go back and look at all the records that we have throughout the world of what they look like. They're very similar in how they appear, like zombies or ghouls, and they're undead corpses, and they're rotting and stuff like that. Although there are different stories of how they are beautiful, because they're not actually undead, but a different type of vampire, which I'll get to. So today I'm going to talk about one type of vampire called the Strigoi, which are from Romanian folklore, and all about what people believe they were like, how they got rid of them, and all the crazy things they did back then. Now, the Strigoi can be one of two types of creatures in folklore. There is the Strigoi that are the undead, and how we see vampires coming out of their coffins at night, and are undead corpses. They are also, those type of Strigoi are also known as the Moroi. They believe it's because the Moroi came in from like a different culture and kind of got adapted, or they believe that Moroi also means nightmare, and which I think seeing someone come back from the dead would be in fact a nightmare. The other type of Strigoi is a sorceress or a witch, and they have very powerful elemental powers that I'll get to at the end of this. So the Strigoi, or the undead Strigoi, the Moroi, appear like, well, a corpse, or how ghouls and such are depicted. They can have a body that's bigger in size than when they died. They have red eyes, blood coming from their teeth, very sharp teeth or bigger teeth. They have very thin arms and legs because they're a corpse. They sometimes are said to be wearing a white or red shirt. That's not in every folklore with them. Some of them said that they can change into different creatures like flies and such, but that also depends like where you're looking. They sometimes can have tails, are hairy, have sickle-like fingernails, like these. And so they're just kind of that typical undead look. So it's believed in some of the Russian, Balkan, and Romanian cultures that your soul doesn't leave your body until 40 days after you die. So in that 40 days, it is possible that someone becomes a Strigoi. The only way that they can tell is that they usually go back to their bodies, depending on the age. If it's a child's body, it's like 3 years later, 4 to 5 years for a young adult, and then 7 years for an elderly adult to check if the body has been decomposed. If the body was not decomposed, I'll get to that in a second, but if it was, they take out the bones, they wash them in water and wine, and then they do another religious ceremony, and they lay it to rest in new linens, and their departed can finally rest, because they know that their soul has in fact moved on. So it was believed that there were many reasons someone could become a Strigoi. If you were born with a call, if you were a bad person or a liar or just a sinner in general. Women who did magic were said to become a Strigoi. Children who were not baptized before their death. If you weren't married, or if you were a woman that looked at a Strigoi, your child would become a Strigoi. If you were the seventh child of the same sex, so like if there were 7 boys and you were the 7th boy, you would become a Strigoi after you died. If a cat jumped over your body when you died, you'll become a Strigoi. If you died by suicide or a witch's curse, you could become a Strigoi. Or if, fate just decided you would become a Strigoi, you could become a Strigoi. So pretty much, if you existed, you'd become a Strigoi. If strange things started happening after your death to your families, like a lot of your other family members started to die, or if the cattle or livestock were dying, they believed you became a Strigoi and they would have to go and unearth you and check. If bad stuff happens around your burial, or if a white horse won't go near the land that you were buried in, if they take up your corpse and your position strangely, or you had blood on your face, they would consider you a Strigoi and you would have to be exterminated. Now, how do you exterminate a vampire? Good question. There are many different ways that what they did to corpses, unfortunately. But the worst one that not worst one, but the most time-consuming one I found was that they take your body, they take the corpse, check it to see if it's decomposed or not. And if it's not, and it looks like it's a Strigoi, and they believe you're Strigoi, they would take the body out of the coffin, take the clothes off, put the clothes back in the coffin, sprinkle it with holy water, and rebury your clothes. I don't know why they would. But they would rebury the clothes, and they would take the body that's in the sack into the middle of the woods. Then they would chop it up into first they would take out the heart, put that aside, chop up the body in little pieces, and burn each piece individually and made sure it became totally ash, because if there is a piece of a Strigoi left, it could reanimate just like Wolverine. They would burn all those pieces, which would just be disgusting, and then they would take the heart and burn that. And when they did that, they would use the smoke and ash and bless everyone with it, so that no bad juju would follow you. I can't even imagine the smell of that and just the mental and emotional impact that would have on anyone involved. I can't. We always look at this and just kind of see it as villagers who didn't, that weren't like us, but we're not that different mentally and emotionally as we think we are compared to our ancestors. So I can't imagine. So some better ways to get rid of Strigoi, where they would stab the body with an iron fork, turn the body upside down so it's facing down. For some reason it couldn't get up that way, even though if they found a body like that meant it was Strigoi. I'm not quite sure. Or they would leave them in the middle of the mountains and they wouldn't be able to get back. Which is similar to what the Greeks did. They would dump the bodies they thought were their vampires on islands. So I'm hoping out there somewhere there's just an island filled with vampires, which would be a good story. I should write that down. And then they also usually went after the Strigoi on a Saturday night, because Strigoi couldn't rise on a Saturday night. That's either a biblical thing, or maybe they just need a day off. I don't know. But some ways to prevent Strigoi are by just going ahead and sticking that stake in right when you bury someone, just to make sure. Run the body through some river water. Putting a needle in the heart, which using iron stakes, rods, filling the ears, nose, eyes, fingernails, mouth with stones and incense. or also putting like millet and garlic in there with the body. Or a really powerful priest could just bless the body and it'd be fine as long as he was really powerful. But yeah, it's how they've found bodies that are like this, and that's because they believe that they were Strigoi. And I don't know what would make people think that. What happened for people to think that? If it was just them opening a casket and seeing parts of the body decomposing and not understanding that's how the body worked, or some weird stuff happened back then that they could just not explain. Now, the Living Strigoi are a little different. They are witches or sorcerers who have a lot of power and are said to either be kind of like psychic vampires, perhaps, like Colin and on What We Do in the Shadows, or they were people who would bathe or drink in the blood of the dead, similar to Elizabeth Bathory. They also could like move their soul from their body and get around and meet with other Strigoi. And it was said that they would meet in either packs of 7 or 9 in the middle of the woods, and they would just appear like floating orbs. So if you came across that in the middle of the woods, then you should run. Then they also like met once a year, either the living Strigoi or the undead Strigoi would meet once a year to plan on who they would attack and torment. I mean, that's what I do every year, just a day where you just plan who you're going to mess with. They also would fight amongst each other, like they didn't get along, and there would be these big Strigoi fights in cemeteries and burial areas or in the woods. So that's why you wouldn't want to go out at night. The Strigoi are also different because the living Strigoi are also different because they have powers over different elements, so like rain, water in general, fire, and it was reported as powers over bread and bees. Just bees. It was said that there would be bees who wouldn't make honey, and then those were the Strigoi bees, and they were, I don't know what they did. If there was a drought, it was because anytime a Strigoi bathed, that would cause it to rain. So if there was a drought, that meant they haven't bathed, and so the nobles would order everyone in the town to bathe, which brings up questions on how often people in the past bathed, to me at least. So they knew someone had to be a Strigoi. So if everyone took a bath and then it rained, that meant they got rain. I don't think they did anything. I think they just got rain. They can travel at night any day of the week. Like they're not powerless on Saturdays. But it is said that they are most powerful on the new moon and the least powerful on the full moon, which is the opposite of werewolves and interesting for a fight scene. But they also were powerful on St. Andrew's Eve and St. George's Eve. During this time, in order to prepare for any Strigoi attacks that could be in the town, the people would anoint their house in garlic. They would turn everything upside down because apparently Strigoi could ask like a cup to let them in. And if it's upside down, for some reason the cup can't let them in. And then a Strigoi is very polite, so if you're telling a story, it won't interrupt you, so you just tell stories all night. And if you needed to get inside anyone's house, you would have to like call them 3 times, like, "Hey George, hey George, hey George," because the Strigoi could only say it twice. They can't count. They can't say something 3 times. So that is the Strigoi. those are the vampires of Romanian mythology. I'll probably go over different mythologies later because I like vampires and I think it's interesting in how different they are. If you want to read a story about Strigoi, I have my World of Vampires series that is available on the Kindle, and then the paperback is available as well on Amazon, and I'll be uploading it to different places tonight. Well, it'll be live by the time you see this on Barnes & Noble and everywhere, and I'm getting a audiobook done of it, and it's just a novella, so it's a pretty short read. And then if you want to learn more about mythology and different folklores, be sure to check out my Instagram because I have a Mythology of the Day post almost every single day, 5 days a week, where you just get to learn different mythology, and I ask fun questions for you to answer. So check that out. I hope you all have a great day, and may this month be spooky for you. Thanks.